Imagine that you're doom scrolling on Instagram and come across this fashion plate from 1883 and are like, yes, I need that in my life. And then you show it to your friend and she's like, I'll be the seagull to your lobster. So you start planning and you realize that you need like 20 something lobsters to put on this gown. And you're on a really tight budget. Would you go buy 20 lobsters and eat them and use the shells? No. Would you source 20 something Beanie Babies to put on the thing? No. You decide to make them out of literal trash. Would you regret your life decisions? But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning. I purchased a single silicone lobster mold to make my trash lobsters. Because these are going on a dress that will be worn by Chaos Incarnate, I opted for a cooked paper mache recipe in hopes that it would make them a bit hardier. It takes about 20 minutes to set each layer into the mold, as this is sticky stuff and the antenna and legs are fiddly. Each layer needs at least 12 hours to dry before adding the next, and each lobster needs at least 3 layers for stability. That means each lobster takes at least 3 days to complete, if one has the spoons to work on it at all, which some days I didn't. Time to dye. All right, so this is the finished dyed twill for the overskirt. It's a very pretty color. It's not quite the color that I want it to be. I wanted it to be a little bit greener, even though this is robin's egg. To me, it's not quite green enough to be robin's egg. Typical for Dharma, most of their teals tend to skew very blue. I did a test swatch and I was okay with it on the test swatch, but now that it's completely finished the dyeing process, it feels just a little too blue. Yesterday, I did some dye swatching with my lemon yellow, trying to see if I could take down the blue a little and give it a little bit more green, but the result is something one could only describe as lime green, which is not what we're going for. But before I take out all of my dye, pull out my weird yellows, my browns, trying to see if I can get a closer match, something arrived today that I've been waiting for to test the colors and make sure everything blends well. So let's go ahead and open that package up and see where we're at from there. The teal is definitely way more green than I was expecting it to be, but you know, I don't hate it. So I think before I make any final decisions, I'm just gonna set this up somewhere where I can see it, and from there I'll make a decision, because I think it's gonna be a lot of work to try and re-dye this, so we'll see. This, my friends, is the final lobster to come out of the mold. Woohoo! Unfortunately, there's still a lot more work to be done before we can call these trash lobbies finished. First order of business is to pick off all the dried scuzz off of the edges of the lobsters. There are just so many little nooks and crannies, it was impossible to wipe the mold while it was wet. Here he is, all nice and clean. Aw, nice little trash lobster. Time to prime. I'm using acrylic paint. If I'd been smarter, well, if I'd been less overwhelmed and was thinking further ahead, I could have left room in the budget to buy some cheap paint instead of using what I had on hand, which was my good art paint. But alas, 'tis not how it went down. Now it's ready for red. You may notice it's already August. Yes, my friends, I've done little but make lobsters for 4 months. At this point, I was exceptionally overwhelmed and exhausted and worried about not only getting this one done in time, but also my epic Halloween costume done in time. Thankfully, I have friends. And my amazing friend the Lobster, my amazing friend Alex offered to help paint the lobsters with me. So I drove up to her place and we, aided by her dog Pepper, had a little lobster painting party. Alex is my hero for helping me. Pretty sure without her help, I'd still be painting these buggers. Even with the two of us, after 3 hours, we'd only finished priming the 26 lobsters and painting one red coat on about half of them. So I set about painting the rest in batches, a few every day to break up the monotony. Each lobster needed 2 coats of red paint to cover the newsprint. Then I used some burnt sienna to dry brush into the crevices of each lobster to give it more depth and realism. I decided I was okay with the color, so let's go ahead and cut out the underskirt. Here I have for you a heavily pieced and only partially assembled foundation skirt. The reason it is heavily pieced is because I bought fabric for this dress twice. The first time I bought it from this particular fabric company that eludes me at the moment, but editing Jackie will put on the screen. It took 3 months to get to me, and when I got it, the color was exceptionally different from what the display had been, and I couldn't use it. So I had to buy fabric twice, so we are being especially economical with this make. The reason it's partially assembled is because I'm gonna trim this thing, at least half trim it, before I fully assemble it. Is that logical? No, but sometimes you gotta make some accommodations for a crazy schedule. So the reason this is pieced only on the bottom is because this is going to be covered in trim. The original gown is covered in grass. I couldn't think of a way to simulate grass without an exceptional amount of further hand sewing, or without using some sort of paper product that would be too delicate for my level of chaos. So instead, I'm opting for pleats and puffs. I also picked this teal color because the olive green of the fashion plate is a really bad color for my skin tone. Almost as bad as the light blue of the gown fabric. After hemming, I started pleating. Someone gifted me some fusible hem tape, which I put on the back of the pleats at the very top once they were ironed to keep them nice and stable for sewing. Okay kids, here is the finished pleating. Woo! I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. I ended up doing this at a sewing retreat that I went to last weekend. Consequently, I forgot my video card, so I got a little bit of footage of me working on this, but I did not get very much footage at all because I had to film on my phone, which is stupid. So stupid, in fact, that a couple of weeks after this, I lost all of my photos on my phone while trying to back them up. So the footage that I took of that process is now lost to the ether, along with all my vacation photos. But don't worry, I only lost the photos I took with this current phone that I have, so about 18 months worth. The rest of the stuff was in a totally different folder. Thank the gods. Doing this on a very large ironing table instead of my tiny, undersized ironing board was the best decision I ever made, because I would have been crying if I had done this on my ironing board. So now we're ready to put her together. We're gonna add the yoke. We're gonna add a big ass pocket. Add some plackets. And a waistband. Okay. That's all the sewing that needs to be done on this lady, so I guess she's ready for lobsters. Let's make some tape for lobster attachment. Hot glue is the trash lobster's friend. My thought was that tabs at each claw and the tail would be sufficient sewing points for attaching to the bottom of the skirt. Well, my friends, I present to you the final lobster. That's right, they're done. You have no idea how good it feels to finally have those words come out of my mouth. And after 4.5 months, I can finally clean off my coffee table. Yeah. Let's sew these suckers on! First, we need to secure the pleats to keep them neat during lobsterification. We'll place the center lobster first and pin it down before sewing. This was extremely tedious because I had a really hard time getting the pleats to lay flat while I sewed. And I didn't make the tabs on the little lobsters long enough. And the thread kept getting caught on all the little legs and the other lobsters, and ugh. Well, that's one of 4 pieces finished. Next on the list, the overskirt or apron. The overskirt is covered in little lobsters. To me, the fastest and easiest way to get those little suckers on was to do block printing. Up close though, because they look like they're swimming, they kind of look like shrimp to me, so I bought a shrimp stamp. So I did some testing of my little shrimp stamp yesterday, and I'm sure glad I did, because ooh, does it look bad. Between the color of the red and the splotches, it looks like the Shrimp Massacre at Festival Row, which honestly is what happens when you put shrimp in front of me, but that's beside the point. So the problem was I was using my little stamp and the paint was getting all over the negative portion of the stamp as I was stamping it and then stamping it onto the fabric, and it looks really bad. So I made a decision and I purchased a carve your own stamp blocking kit. I don't want to spend all of this time to hand carve a lobster, but I've already put so much time into this gown. I don't want to have a portion of it that I'm not happy with, that I could just put a little more time and effort into making it look good. Didn't want to spend more money, but hopefully it'll look better in the long run. While I'm waiting for that to arrive, it should come tomorrow, I'm going to focus instead on my little lobster guys in the center front of the apron. Pardon the lighting, but I just have to say, I have never been proud of anything this janky. This is where we get to have some fun. The little lobsters on the front peek up over the trim. I decided to pay homage to the thing that sparked my lobster obsession, an angry lobster emoji from an IM service of my youth that is long gone. So the center guy will be angry lobster, the others will have different faces. Thank you to all of my Ko-fi supporters for help raising funds for this gown. Even with using cheap cotton and literal trash, it was still a huge endeavor and one I wouldn't have managed without you. If you're enjoying this video and want to help support this channel, please consider checking the link down below. Or you can just drop in the comments and leave me a little lobster. May I present Judgmental Lobster, Angry Lobster, the OG, and my new favorite, Cannot Unsee Lobster. Stamp kits arrived, so let's bite the bullet and carve out the stamp. Definitely using the tool upside down. LOL, BRB. Here is my practice with the new lobster stamp. Better, still not good. I think I'm going to go for less lobsters so that if this happens, I can just go back in with a paintbrush and fill it in after I'm done. However, I was still getting like little bloody spots everywhere, so I devised a little barrier to put around my stamp so when I stamp it down, any ink that's on this part will catch on the parchment paper. That feels really clever to me, but only practice will tell whether it's actually successful. This is screen printing ink loosened with a little bit of water. It took 3.5 hours to completely block print the back apron. And if you couldn't tell by this weird cool toned light, I'm about to lose the sun, but I'm also determined to get this entire overskirt block printed today. Luckily, this one won't take quite as long because we have much less surface area to cover, especially because we have the star lobsters in the front on the bottom of these. Done. Ooh, pretty. Instead of pleats, I'm opting for puffs for the bodice trim, mostly because it's faster and I like the visual interest. To save time, I'm using the dreaded rolled hem foot, which only caused some problems for once. Then I marked a line every 4 inches for long running stitches. This looks familiar to you, it's because this is the same way you make puffs for 18th century gowns. And not that fun to watch, so let's move on. With the trim on, it was time to tackle the bustle. I opted for a simple gather instead of any sort of complicated pleating. Check out my booty, oh yeah! All right, so I hemmed and hawed about how I was going to do the bustle for a while, and I think this is what we've landed on. Since this is very early into the second bustle era, I wanted something a little subdued. This is simply tied up at a point with 2 pieces of tape in the center back. I also added a second piece of tape in case I ever want to have a double bump. Well, my friends, the bodice is together, mostly. I gotta put some more hooks and eyes in the front and kind of make a few fiddly adjustments and hem it. But I think we're ready for the final stage, which is going to be the poofs on the top, the poofs on the bottom, the layer of lobsters, and the little sleeveys. All our puffs are pinned on the top. I think it looks great. It was really quick to do. I just, drew up my basting stitches and pinned each little puff onto the neckline. I think that having this teal framing my face is going to make this much more flattering on me since this is really not a good color. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack this down. I'm also going to do the same to the bottom. I was originally thinking I wanted to make the poofs a little bit longer here, but I think it'll look uneven. We're almost done! We're almost done! And here is my super professional, super tailored, not at all, just a rectangle slapped willy-nilly onto the arm size sleeve puffs. I pleated the top bit, and then I just scrunched up the rest of the fabric till it looked good. Let's pin on them lobbies. The one at the center front is going to be attached on one side and then attach on the other with a hook and eyes so I can get in and out. The other 2 at the top will be permanently affixed. I do have some serious concerns about mobility with all these lobsters on my bodice. If you're interested in how they held up during the festival and subsequent ball, stay tuned until after the reveal for the behind the scenes. I've got my little guy here. This is it, my friends. The very last stitch of the lobster gown. Here we go. All right, all we got left to do is pin this guy on my shoulder right here. It's done! Now that Dickens on the Strand is over, I thought it'd be interesting to talk briefly about what happened when the camera turned off and I exited out into the world in this contraption. Because making it is one thing, wearing it is another. First, it's extremely heavy with all of those paper mache lobsters on it. I felt like I had an extra 25-pound weight on me. And because of all of the lobsters, particularly in the back of the underskirt, it was the most difficult thing to use the restroom in out of every single costume I have ever made in my life. And a lot of the lobster damage that happened in the back of the underskirt had to do with the fact that I was having to lift it up from the bottom. That's going to need to be rectified before I wear this to an event again. Also, the weather turned completely against us. Every year I've gone to this event, it's been pretty warm at least one of the days, like 70s, 80s. This year, it was in the 50s. And not only that, but it rained. As soon as we got to the venue, downpour, which is sadly why I wasn't able to film any of the reveal at the event or get any footage of me with my feathered counterpart. I got soaked, and so did the lobsters. And as the day went on, bad things started to happen. The overskirt got the most damage. Here is the finished bow. What a mess that is, right? This lobster guy got soaked and he's lost a lot of legs and he also lost his tab. And of course this was the centerpiece, so you can see that it was looking a little worse for wear. The back is also stained with God knows what. What is that? I don't even know. What did they spill on me? Even with the loss of limb, the cold and the damp, it was very fun to wear, especially with the Seagull next to me. We had a blast showing them off, being goofy, and we even won the group costume competition.
Our next
People lost their minds at the spectacle, especially at the ball in the evening when we were around all of these other makers who understood the massive labor and time that went into making these gowns. That was validating. But was it worth it? You know, I'm not sure. I think it looks fabulous. It is a blast to wear. And if it wasn't something that didn't keep breaking, I would be 100% for certain that it was worth it. But at this time, not knowing whether I'll get more than another single use out of this thing, I'm not sure I can make that judgment. One thing I can say for sure, next year, we're doing something a little more chill. Thanks for making it to the end. If you've missed any of the other videos in this series, be sure to check out this playlist here on the screen. Thanks so much for watching. I am so happy this is over. I love y'all, and I'll catch you in my next video. Dingle, 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 dingle. Ugh, the things I do for humor.